Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Tea with Doug G. As you can tell, I'm not Doug, but I am Ben Tankersley. So this week it is Tea with Tankersley.
Yeah.
Doug was a little busy tonight, so he asked me to step in. So of course I said yes. And we've got two lovely guests this week. First to my right is Mr. Tristan Webb. You've probably seen him before. Been on the show a few times.
Hello.
And then all the way on the other end is Tristan and my old professor, Dr. Amanda Bright. Welcome. Dr. Bright.
She's not old.
Right. She is not old, but she is our old
Thank
professor.
You. Former. We like to be precise with language here, Ben.
Well, that works too. But yes, Dr. Bright was our capstone professor when we were both students at UGA in the journalism program. So, Dr. Bright, if you want to, go ahead and take a second to kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. So, my name is Amanda Bright, and I have the privilege of teaching journalism here at Grady, or Grady College at the University of Georgia. I took a long and winding road here. I was a community journalist and did all kinds of different jobs for many years. Then I took an odd stint teaching high school, did high school journalism and English for about a decade, and then pivoted to my PhD and to teach journalism and to run Grady News Source at the college level. So I am super pleased to be here with the two best students I have ever had, and that is... That is amazing that you both showed up in these little panels here together, and to talk about one of the most important issues we can talk about today, which is journalism, where it's going, where it's been, and what we need to do about it.
All right. Well, what an introduction, really. So first question, I know that you mentioned you kind of had a long and winding road to where you're at now. You've worn a bunch of different hats as a journalist. So of the titles that you've held over the years, which has been your favorite?
That's a good question. Like most people who end up going into our field, I wanted to be a reporter and a writer first. And that's what I fell in love with when I was 15, 16 years old in my high school newspaper. But it was the first job I got out of college, which was not reporting, which was copy editing and designing newspaper pages and magazine spreads, that I absolutely probably enjoyed the work the most. Mm-hmm. And I always tell my students, you just don't know, like you have this thing in your head, right? About what your life's going to be like and what you're good at and what you're going to do. And I have always learned the most and enjoyed the most the stuff that I kind of was forced to do because there were no other options. This was the job I got. So I learned how to do it. And editing really became a passion for me, which is why my job right now is just my dream job. It 100% is my dream job because not only do I get to teach fabulous humans like the two of you, but also I get to run the digital products for Grady News Source, which is lots and lots of editing and design. So that's probably personally what I enjoy the most. Seeing pieces go from a pitch, like an idea that somebody had out in the community, all the way through to publication, engaging with the audience and showing them something about their world they didn't know. That huge process arc is so exciting.
Yeah, I feel like Tristan and I have both had kind of interesting journeys as well, because I don't feel like either one of us really ended up doing what we set out to do. I know for myself, when I first got into journalism, I was dead set on becoming a sports reporter.
Sure.
I went to UGA, did the sports media program, Professor Michaelis, Professor Suggs, both great. I love them both. I never, ever want to do sports media. It's nothing against it. I just don't have, I think, the passion that you need to really do it. Because, it is one of those things that you have to think about every second of every day. And if you don't, you will get eaten alive. So I transitioned more into using my skills to do different jobs, and then also having stuff like this, like the podcast that Tristan and I do, Setting the Skeen on the side, while still being able to use those skills. And Let me unmute Tristan so he can talk about his journey.
Thank you, sir. The main reason I wanted to go into Grady was because of News Source. And I volunteered when I first came to UGA, and I was really stressed out all the time. And it was
hard to believe.
but that even made me want to do it more. So that I was really interested in that at first. But I got into understanding what it was to be a beat reporter and a multimedia journalist in that position. And then also I really got into photography, specifically photojournalism. And that's what I really, really liked to do. And I liked to take a slow approach to a story to make sure I have everything that I can get and really get to know the people I'm talking to. So anyway, it changed drastically throughout journalism. And I think that's part of it for anyone. I mean, a lot of people change their majors as well when they go into college.
I started off as a computer science major.
I'm just telling you, we should just sit down again in 10 years, then again in 20 years, and again, we'll be wholly different people. But that's the beauty, right? Is that everyone's story is complex and winding, and no way would you ever have told me I would have a PhD. I'm a first generation college student. No way would you ever have told me I would be living in Georgia, working at an amazing university in a journal. No, I would never have believed you. So I think that's just a testament to how fun life can be. And you guys are just starting off on that. You're already seeing the wines, but there is more to come.
I hope so.
Yeah. So kind of on the idea of, having this long winding road, don't really know where it's going to take you. Would you ever go back to full-time journalism?
It's funny. I still have journalism, dreams where, I will dream about being in the newsroom again. Now, I will say, because of my job and because of News Source, I am just about as close as you can get to feeling like I'm in a working newsroom. And we have all kinds of things that come up and that I am dealing with all the same things that I used to. However, there is a part of me that longs to be back in a full-time newsroom again. And particularly with the knowledge I have now, I would love to be a hiring manager in a newsroom, because I feel like, because I work with the capstone students right before they go into the field, to be able to play both sides of that game would be fascinating for me. And just the digital technology has grown so much since I was day to day in a full-time position and not just freelancing or doing gig work. I think that would be super exciting too. But I think, there are so many reporters that are better than I was a reporter. And there are so many editors that are better than I was an editor. Yeah. And I want to support them and then just encourage you all and throw you into the mix and to make that happen. So I'm super comfortable where I'm at. But yeah, I still do. I'll wake up and be like, it's deadline. And I was working in the newsroom on 9/11, where, and we were a brunch paper. So we had to tear up the paper and read, I got to make the phone call several times and yell, stop the presses. There's just nothing beating that. But for now, I'm super happy. I'm good where I'm at.
All right. Well, I kind of in that same thought, I guess, I'll probably say that a lot. How did you get into teaching?
So that was a fluke thing that may possibly be somewhat illegal. When I was working at the daily newspaper, we got a phone call from the local community college, and they were super desperate. They needed someone to teach a graphic design class, and they had no one qualified. And so they're like, do you have anybody? And I said, no, we don't have anyone qualified. All I have is a bachelor's, and everyone on my desk, all we have was bachelor's degrees. And we don't care. We're that desperate. So I took the position and taught a 2-hour college level graphic design class, mostly marketing, advertising, but there were some people who were interested in communications in general. I had never taught a class before. I had no idea how to structure it. I had no idea what a syllabus should look like. Besides for, I was in college once. My husband is a math teacher, a middle school math teacher. And so, he was able to help me a bit. But I just went in there and I was like, all right, let's try this, kids. I have no idea. And I had this crazy diverse group of students that were all non-traditional as much as just fresh out of high school. It was like the blind leading the blind. We were just making it up as we went. But that classroom interaction was something that I had never experienced before, and it was electric. And I just loved it. And they said, "Oh, you had good course evaluations. Can you come back next semester, do the exact same class, plus also teach web design and coding?" And I was like, sure. I had learned like 5 minutes of that in college, so I taught myself a bunch of stuff, and then I taught that class. And then I was like, okay, I think I want to do this. So I ended up going back to college, getting my teaching certificate, as well as a full master's degree in English, because in Illinois, that's what you had to have in order to teach. So that's what I did.
All right. Well, I would definitely say that you still very much carried some of that kind of freeform feel, even when I had you, because I remember on like one of the first days of our class, you made it a point to say, this is your capstone class of the whole Grady program. So what have you not learned? And we're going to do that. So I remember we had days, I think we spent a couple days on graphic design, just like pretty much if someone said, "Hey, I don't really know how to do this," you took the time to be like, "Okay, let's learn how to do this," which honestly, I was incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, same here in our class. It was the same way. Yeah. I mean, there were things that, because when you get into Grady, you have to pick specific courses, and you can't take everything because there's too many things to take.
You can, you'll just be there forever.
Yeah, I guess so. Right. So that was useful.
Well, it's funny because that occurs to me that's one of the reasons why I became a journalist in the first place. And one of the reasons I love being a teacher is because I just love learning. And I want you all to love learning too. And I want you to be able to teach yourselves. And, Ben, I vividly remember you doing the first interactive quiz Grady News Source ever hosted. And then you were like, "This is what I want to do. I want to do pictures of these," because we did housing, and I want to do pictures of these things. I want to ask people questions so like they can understand that they don't really understand what affordable housing looks like. I was like, well, shoot, I don't know. I just built this website from scratch. I don't know. I can't do that. So we found a plug, right? You found a plugin. I think you searched and found a plugin.
One of us did.
And we made it work, and it's still there, man. I took that quiz last week. I don't know. And so I think that is, to me, the spirit that is going to propel our profession forward, but also just society in general, that we are ultimately like, we're not going to stop learning. We're not going to stop trying new things. And if there's something somebody needs to know, like there's a YouTube video that will show me, and I'll figure it out. So I love that you all caught that spirit too. It's clear in your class.
One thing I loved about a lot of my classes at Grady is that, we didn't just learn like the material, like we learned how to learn about other things. Because I had to take the sports multi-platform class since I did the sports media program. And I got thrown an equestrian beat.
Yes.
I knew nothing about equestrian going in, but had to go in and do probably 3 or 4 stories throughout the semester on a sport that I knew nothing about. So I had to ask many questions before I even started working on it. But kind of staying in the educational field, obviously COVID-19 has thrown everything out the window. Has adjusted how teachers and professors have had to teach their courses. So with that in mind, how do you see journalism education changing as a result of COVID-19?
So, what's cool, what has been cool for me is that the two things that I know how to do is build curriculum and use digital tools. And so like when COVID hit, I was like, this is bad. This is endemic, but I'm ready. Like, let's do this. And so it felt like the intersection of things that I had learned how to do. And I always love a challenge. I want to reinvent stuff as often as possible. When I think about the global picture of that, we put on a Live at 5 broadcast several times a week, and there's only 1 or 2 people, in one space in our newsroom. Most all of us are working from home. I haven't been in the newsroom in months. And I think that there is a sense in which journalism is going to benefit with an embedded kind of feel with its reporters, right? I don't know that we need to be in the newsroom together as much as we need to be in the communities that we're serving. And I think that has needed to return to normalcy. I think what ended up happening was we had all these digital tools and we were able to be in places, right, digitally, but that meant we were all in the newsroom together and then we were reaching out to sources digitally. It should have been we were out in the communities and we were sending our stuff back in digitally, right? So we were doing it backwards. And so this is kind of forcing us to do it, rethink it, and almost become like, beat reporters in a real sense. So I'm excited about that kind of concept growing. I'm also excited that so many people who relied on traditional forms of storytelling have had to just learn how to make a freaking graphic, right? We're just okay, we're going to have to make a bar chart because we cannot be there to get the B-roll or that we need. I think, Professor Johnson is doing this remote portraiture stuff that's just so freaking cool with his photo kids. They're thinking of all kinds of ways. I know Professor Shumway is you can mic them from across the street if you do their phone and they're we can get their audio. And I love that spirit of innovation and trying to we're going to be safe. So we're going to be creative and think about what that means. I'm not a big fan of online learning. As a general rule.
I don't think a lot of people are.
Right. And I think there are certain types of students who do not do well in that environment. They are good with person face-to-face accountability is good for them. But there are people who can learn well and do well. And we need to start thinking about serving those communities, and even more so. And then I'm done. Oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. Okay. And then the last thing is continual learning. I think we keep thinking Grady's a 2-year program. Here's journalism, 2 years, go, right? Instead of, we should be a revolving door for journalists mid-career, late career, all, and continually getting new skills, learning new ideas, partnering with younger people. And I would love to see that kind of grow because of our connectedness through digital tools.
Yeah, I run marketing for a theater group, MP Theater, and we have had to, I think a lot of people are trying to look forward to the point of where, whenever we can get back together, we'll do this, and it's that's an unknown that we don't know. So why suffer through this time when we can be creative and figure out how to make something that is good and tailored to an online platform? So we're looking at productions and taking a play and saying, how can we adapt this to work on on Restream, if that's what we want to use, or something anything. How can we live stream this, but what if someone has to hug someone? How does that look? You can't hug virtually. But what else can we do? If we have to change subtleties in the script or something, that's it's just being innovative about it. So that's a good point.
I remember MP did a play fairly recently. The name escapes me, but y'all streamed it on Restream, and y'all had different cast members interacting with each other from different places. So they would hand something off screen and then they would pull the thing back on screen. Yeah. It's just
and it was silly.
It's silly, but it works.
Yeah. It was called If Girls Asked Boys for Dates. It was from the 50s. And I thought they were being clever. What if girls asked boys instead of boys asked girls? But yeah, someone hands someone a flower and they would grab it off screen, and that's simple, but that's the idea, Yeah.
All right. Well, kind of getting back into journalism, we have a question here. Apparently, recently, you taught a course on combating information disorder. Can you explain what exactly information disorder is and the implications of that?
Sure. So I don't know if you all know this, but there's some things that aren't true on the internet.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
News.
I'm so sorry if this is.
Wait, you're saying I shouldn't get my news from Facebook?
I don't even know where to begin. So Ben, we need to have another conversation. I was here's what happened. I was supposed to take students to Dublin last summer and lead a study abroad, and that didn't happen. And so the idea was, I could teach something else. And this kind of floated to the top as a need. And I'll be teaching it again, I believe in the summer, and then again in the fall, as well as a full course. It's called Media Savvy, Becoming Digitally Literate. We tried to make the title a little interesting. And it is for journalism and non-journalism majors to be able to navigate how to figure out what's true and what's not true on the internet, how to be able to have conversations with people about those things, and to understand what journalists do and the tools that they use in order to vet information. Its implications are everything, right? So what I will say is, as someone who lives in the world of journalism and education as my two fields, I think what we have seen over the last few years is a critical failure in both of those systems. And both of those systems failing at the same time has caused what we see. So it is that there is information that is untrue that is being circulated on the internet, right? Okay, so, and people are getting and trusting social media and shares from friends more than news organizations that have processes to verify and ethics codes. Okay, but it's also the critical thinking or lack thereof of the general public in order to navigate this place where things may not be as they seem, very hall of mirrors, right? And as an educator and as a former high school teacher, one of the things I always tried to do was say, be skeptical, right? Like, don't believe everything you read, like, think about it. And so what we're seeing is, these are the Achilles heels culturally right now. And it's obviously causing people to make choices that are not good for them and for society. That being said, I love teaching the course, but I see it as an incredibly huge responsibility. And I am constantly researching. This is the course I don't put down. Everything I read, I'm saving it, I'm rereading it again. I'm thinking about how to approach it differently. I'm looking at new tools because I think the landscape is just constantly shifting. And I think the stakes are high for people being able to make this part of their life. I had a great discussion with one of our news sourcers last week, and she said, well, what tools should we use? What do you tell people to do? And I'm like, well, that's the problem, is that sure, I could tell you to do a Google advanced search or a reverse image search or use TinEye, or right. There's stuff out there, but there's no linear progression on how to figure it out. You just have to spend time double checking. And who's got that? I've got 2 kids. I got to do all the, at this parent meeting at the school, who's got time to track all the information down? That's what journalists are supposed to do. That's what we're paid for, right? But people don't always trust us, and some of that's warranted. Yeah. So inside of that, it's all the things. But it has been such a great learning experience to teach the class, and I'm excited about expanding it here in the fall.
All right. Well, I also wanted to ask you about another kind of subsect of journalism that you really focused on in my capstone class, which is solutions journalism. So can you kind of briefly explain what that is and how it differs from what people would consider, quote unquote, normal journalism?
What is normal journalism? We should talk about that instead. Okay, no, because it's not done by normal people, if you've met our faculty. Sure. We're all a little bit crazy. So I'm actually teaching. So fun fact, one of the capstones this semester is only solutions journalism. Awesome. It's the first time that we've done that. And so we're joining University of Oregon and Temple University and Arizona State as, one of the universities giving this a shot. It is defined as rigorous reporting on responses to social issues or problems. The idea is that in general, journalists focus on reporting the problem. And that has historically been our role as the watchdog of democracy, is to say, oop, you're doing a bad thing, or, oh, there's child labor, or, right, and we point it out, and then we let society kind of work it out. and fix it. I think the anxiety, the apathy that has come with such a high volume of news and news that is littered with disinformation has caused such a disconnectedness. And solutions journalism is meant to finish the job of normal journalism. In that we apply the same rigorous reporting skills. We look for evidence. We look for, is it working? What are the limitations? What's good or bad about this response? We apply that to the way people are trying to solve the problems as much as the problems themselves. Totally important to say at this point that it is not advocacy. It's not brand journalism. In no way are we saying the solution is the one we should do, or this is the best, or none of that language is used. It's just saying, hey, these people, this organization is trying to fix this problem. What's working and what's not about their response, and how can we learn from it? And I think research is showing, some of my colleagues are doing a lot of research on this, that it's showing that it is having a huge impact on people's framework for their world, on their mental state, giving them a sense that someone is stepping in and doing something and they could partner with them or make it better. So we're doing an entire semester, all solutions, and I'm really excited. I'll be teaching the first class in person tomorrow morning, and I'm really excited to see what the students do.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds really exciting. I remember when I got to do a solutions piece about housing, and I ended up talking about some program that the Athens Land Trust was doing, and got to go out and talk to some kids that were in the program. It was a really cool experience to see what it was that they were doing, and explain it, and explain that here's what it is, and here's how it can get better, but here is what it is. There are these problems, but there are also people working to solve these problems.
Yeah. Well, our topic was food for the semester, but we took a turn and we focused on the landfill mainly. There's problems where the landfill is filling, as it does, but yeah, too much. So the land is too full now, and it's looking at how that process works. So we had to really do a profile piece on the landfill, because not a lot of people think about landfills. So we needed to explain what that is and how that works, and then go in and say, here's the issue that's happening. They don't have enough land to fill. Sorry. It's low-hanging fruit. And, so explaining that, and then kind of like Dr. Bright said, letting people figure that out, or at least going to the step of saying, here's ways people are working on this, and interviewing them and showing people how that's going. So, yeah.
We had some great 360 photography, right, of the landfill.
Of some of the garbage.
Yeah. Which is, most people, these kind of things are so important, because most people, both the two things you just mentioned, either they've never heard of, and I think yours was called the Young Builders something, Ben, or the
Young Urban Builders.
Yeah. No one has either never heard of it, right? And so they don't know to support it. There's a lot of
people who haven't heard of Athens Land Trust.
Absolutely. And so there's no way to participate. But the other thing is even if they have heard of it, who has the time to, what Tristan is saying, is to investigate, to think through what's happening and what this means. And that is one of our sacred responsibilities, is to say, we are doing this for you as a service. We're going to go in and figure out what's going on so that you are more informed and can make better choices about your community and your life and your world. And I think this type of journalism allows people to participate and feel empowered, and also to hold accountable those who make decisions. So how often do we do a story in journalism and then here's the problem, and then we move on to something else, right? Because something else is on fire over here, especially in 2020, all of the things were on fire. And so this gives us a chance to say, no, 3 years later, we use taxpayer dollars, right? We use SPLOST money, whatever, to do this. is it working? Is it happening? Could it be expanded to a new population? Is it not serving these people it was supposed to serve?
Mm-hmm.
We need that kind of thorough journalism.
Yeah. And I just from like the stuff I read, I think the more interesting solutions pieces are the ones that look at what isn't working, because it kind of takes the idea of, well, how can we take this idea that might be a good idea and make it better so it actually does what it was set out to do?
100%.
All right. So this next question is kind of a two-part question, talking about journalism moving forward. So as we are in a more digital age, what are some recent journalism trends that we can expect to see kind of become more prominent over the next several years?
I'm going to approach this from a glass half full perspective,
okay,
if you don't mind,
yeah,
because I'm just feeling 2021 needs a little bit of boost getting over the finish line here. I believe that we have started talking about diversity in newsrooms and in coverage in a more meaningful way. And that is something that we are going to really start maybe trying to do instead of just talking about it. That is one of the issues that I think we have known forever, that newsrooms are made up of generally the same types of people, and it is not okay. And it has never been okay, but we have absolutely just let it be. And I believe that diversity in the broadest way that you can think of the concept of diversity needs to happen inside of news staffs, into leadership and ownership of news organizations, and then will show in how we cover and what we cover. We are still only this much of the iceberg when it comes to what's really happening in communities, especially those that are underrepresented by the newsrooms that they serve. And so it is a complete travesty that we've allowed it to go on this long. And so I think that push is going to continue. My hope is that it is much more than lip service or is much more than box checking, and that we start creating a diversity in our coverage and in our newsrooms that is meaningful. So we'll have to see, we'll have to see how that evolves. I think, print is almost done, for real, which, as somebody who worked in print newspapers for the first part of my career, makes me feel a little, but it's really okay. I think what we're going to see is the print processes of being thorough, of being thoughtful, of being analytical, transfer to digital platforms. I feel like our lives on social media are like straight up middle school, right? Like we are just emotionally reacting to things and just like spitting out whatever comes to mind. Like it is the most, like over hormonal response I've ever seen in my life. And at some point, I think we will mature. And I think in some ways, I hope so too. In some ways, the print kind of having the sun set will bring those people to the digital, and to TV, because those are integrating beautifully now as well. And we're going to say, we need to grow up. We need to put our big boy, big girl pants on and start doing this right, and not just doing it for clicks or for ratings. And I hope that's going to be true too. That so the old concepts will move into the digital space. Those are two that off the top of my head, at least.
Yeah, I really like what you said about diversity in the newsroom, because I'm thinking about my experiences now. Both of the internships that I did, the first one was with Flagpole, which is typically seen as a more progressive news source. Like even the reporting staff there was white men, which is not representative of Athens-Clarke County at all. And it's crazy to see that. I'm not familiar with the staff now because that was 6 years ago.
Sure.
But I mean, it's crazy that, it's 2021 and it's still like that.
Yeah. Well, as storytellers, you're going into the community and you have to be in touch with that. And, right. I mean, I can tell you as a white male, I only have so much reach as far as what I know and what my culture is like, so yeah. Diversity is necessary.
And it's funny. In my capstone course very difficult because, we covered affordable housing, and, it's unfortunate, but a lot of people that are affected by housing issues are people who are minorities. So a lot of people that I interviewed, that I communicated with, were minorities. And growing up in Oconee County as a white male, I was not able to relate to them on a lot of things. And it was a very humbling experience.
My capstone last semester the theme was diversity. And we had a reporter come or Zoom in who she did solutions work, and she covered issues of diversity in New York City as a freelance multimedia journalist. And, she really, took us to task in all the best kind of ways. And she was like, don't be scared to ask questions. She's like, even if people don't look like you, even if people don't, just ask. Like, we like, everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be understood and listened to. And I think that there is a sense in which all the communities are looking at each other right now, and like, we don't want to make anyone upset. Like, but I want to do the right thing. And like, there's so much anxiety around it all. And I look for the day when we can have really good, meaningful, hard conversations across boundaries of all types. Some of my students this semester are talking about looking at socioeconomic class as one of those divides that's just so hard to conquer. And I really hope that we can start having conversations across these lines. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to solve problems, right? We're just not. So I do think journalism is the method by which we're going to be able to do that better.
All right. Well, kind of looking at the other side of things, instead of trends that we can expect to see, what kind of trends do you think are going to be phasing out sooner rather than later, other than print, obviously?
Well, so I'm hoping none of my colleagues are watching, because this is going to be a weird one. But I think objectivity is going to go away in its current concept. So I'm still playing with this a lot. I went to a University of Illinois J School, which was straight-laced, Pulitzer Prize winning, Washington Post, New York Times people, so like I was taught this is the way it is, and there was no bending any of these rules. I think that I've always believed that objectivity is impossible. Most of us believe, understand that. But that is, it's aspirational, and that we don't get it through being personally objective, but using objective methods and processes that help us arrive at a piece that is showing the panorama of what's going on in a given issue. That being said, I think that what's going on with issues of social justice in our country in the last year or two, especially, are calling us to think differently about what it means to be objective and what it means to journalism from that perspective. And I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? But I think we just need to have critical conversations that explore the idea that by being transparent, we're being objective, versus by pretending we don't believe anything at all, we're being objective, because nobody doesn't believe anything at all. That's a double negative. So I don't know where this leads, but I think this is always rankling around in my head. And I think it's possible that in J School soon, we're gonna start dismantling that concept, and not just saying don't do this, but maybe do this instead, in order to get objectivity, instead of just everything being held back like a dam.
And like, I feel like there are also certain areas where they've become political issues, and they absolutely should not be. I'll try not to get on too much of a soapbox, but even things as simple as, listening to health professionals in the midst of a global pandemic has become a political issue, and it does not make any sense.
And I think the information disinformation issue stems a lot from that, is the politicization of speech that would not have been political a decade or two ago. And it's confusing. And, here's the deal, like we can demonize each other all day long, but at the end of the day, most people are not believing things because they think they're fake. They're believing them because they think they're true, and they think they're doing what's right.
Right.
And so that kind of common ground needs to somehow be captured in order to understand, what objectivity means, what it means to communicate correctly and accurately with our audience, but also to like understand who they are, right? We're not communicating into the void. We're communicating to real people who have real concerns. So yeah, like I think that's going to be a weird one. I think it makes my skin crawl a little bit just to talk about it, but I think it's something we're going to have to do.
Yeah. I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next several years. That actually ties along really well into this next question. So given the state of news and its perception, how do you see the effectiveness of journalism changing in the future?
Oh, Tristan, you want to take that one? Lord. No.
Effectiveness. Well, I mean, we already talked about how it's changing in a digital age. Also, by the way, whenever we say digital age, I feel like we've been in the digital age for like 20 years now.
No, it's like Tron, man. It's like, it's all right. It's still,
we're in the second digital age now. I don't know. It's time for it. You know what I mean?
Post-digital age.
How long we've been in it. But anyway, like my point is that the effectiveness is it's becoming easier to view, and I think we've seen that with social media, how it's been bad, and that people have. It's just like an echo chamber, in whatever you already believe or whatever your biases are, you take that and then you put that in a box of social media, and that's what you've got, and it can go for anything, like anything on the internet, really. But it's just more convenient to look at news, because all I have to do is, while Facebook is what it is, I can just click on the news tab and I can look at Washington Post articles and click on it. It'll take me to the Washington Post website. Mm-hmm. That's not bad. That's just the Washington Post. It's just taking me there. It's just easier to consume news now. There are pros and cons to that.
I'm a big fan of bundling, right? So like I have Hulu and Disney Plus and ESPN Plus all together. That's fabulous, right? Like I want things bundled. I like them aggregated. I use Feedly. I use RSS readers in order to like catch certain trends and pull things through. But I do think that going to an organic news source, right? So like going to its website or its app directly, Pew Center data just came out last week and showed us that people are starting to basically say social media can't be trusted. We're like, really? Okay, great. So I mean, good. So they are going more to native apps, websites, places where they feel like they get that information throughout, not through a filter, right, or shared by somebody else. And that's good. But I think the core behind all of this is that we are not trusted. Even when people are like, the New York Times, I've always read the New York Times. I love the New York Times. But even then, they're like, "Ooh, but is that right?" I told my students the other day that when in the early 90s, when I was a reporter, which is not that long ago, when I was reporting, you would walk into a room and identify yourself as a reporter, and the seas would part in front of you. And people would be like, "Oh, interview me, take my picture. This is my name, write it down." It was like a celebrity. And I wasn't even a TV person. I was a newspaper person. I mean, we're boring. So, in just a short amount of time, my students now get called names. They get never responded to. They are not treated well, as a general rule. And that is from a lack of trust, that people don't see our value in society. They don't believe what we say or what we do. They think we are out to fill in the blank. That is not actually our purpose. And so I think, the effectiveness of journalism is only comes through trust. Right. That's the only thing we're peddling, is we have information for you and it's true. And if we can't peddle that, we got nothing. Right. And so there's lots of trust initiatives out there, things that are trying to bring transparency, and I don't know what's going to do it. I think there are some subtle shifts happening that look more positive, but we have to earn the trust of our audience back, and that's the only way we're going to do it.
Yeah. Well, how does that happen?
Ben,
I understand it's
Still
like a
uncovering
$1 million question, but
what are you, trained as a journalist? What's the matter with you? Asking these hard questions.
that's what they teach you.
That's what they teach you. Yeah.
I mean,
Now I'm.
To write a thesis on that, I'm sure they have been written.
Yes, I am I'm just reaping what I sowed. So I feel. I don't know. So the big train of thought is Marty Baron, right? The Washington Post. He says we just keep doing what we're doing. We keep our head down. We do good journalism, and we keep doing it, and culture will come back, right? Like it'll shift back. Mm-hmm. And there have been periods of time, if you look at journalistic history, where things have been, yellow journalism, and then we go back to, believing investigative journalism, blah, blah, blah. I think there is also an element of transparency. I think we have always been really bad at our own PR game. I think people don't understand what we do and why we do it. And there are fewer of us, like statistically speaking. And so people don't see us at their kids' t-ball games and talk to us. Like when I introduce myself as a journalist, people are like, what's that? Some kind of like weird museum exhibit. So I think we've got to get better at communicating like our purpose and like our humanity. And then I think, I guess maybe the third piece, and this isn't groundbreaking or anything, but I think maybe the third piece is that we need to start just being super, super honest. Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back to that objectivity, it goes back to diversity, like being like, here are the problems. Because I think journalism has been a bit of an elitist ivory tower. It's been scapegoated as that, but it also has had those elements, right? And so if we're not just like, hey, here's all of our bad stuff, like let's just put up our dirty laundry and then we'll clean it, okay, and then start over. I think that's going to need to happen. Oh, and local journalism needs to come back to life. We need to resuscitate that, because then people will see reporters out in the wild and they'll like them.
Yeah. You noticed, you said something about being transparent. And I did a photo story during the Woodall Weekend Workshop back in 2019.
The Liar's Table.
Yeah. And
I remember everything. It's amazing.
And it was really cool that I was able to sit down with these guys who, this is a closed group, like they meet every weekend in the morning. It's not like they, publicly endorse this group or say, come on, everyone come down for a big meeting, And like all I did was I walked up to them. I told them what I was doing, who I am. I sat down when I felt like it was comfortable to, it wasn't like I was saying, can I do this? Can I do that all the time? Like I was getting consent, to join their group, but also I was being a human being about it and just saying, this feels right, So there, it's like, and throw back to way earlier when you mentioned, defining a certain specific rule to follow to do our work. It's like the humanism can be left out of that, I feel, a lot of times. So bringing it back to being a human is extremely important.
Yeah.
And I think it's also very important for the general public to remember that we are human. Like if you say something and we hear it, we will react to it, especially if those are not good things that are said, because Dr. Brad, I know you mentioned like you've had students go out and within minutes they're called names, and that's not okay.
I know.
Like we're at a place in society where you just blow up at people you don't agree with or don't know anything about, and it's just a hard place to be in, I think. Which actually also flows into the last question. I actually did a very good job of finding this out.
Good job, man. Good job.
Yeah. What is your best piece of advice you can give to someone who's starting out? This is as a struggling interviewer, but I want to broaden it to just struggling as a journalist.
A classic question.
Yeah.
So Tristan kind of foreshadowed this, but what I think has served me best as a journalist and as an educator is genuinely liking and caring about people.
Mhm.
We all know when we're talking to somebody who doesn't care what we're saying or is not really listening, or is, and that happens a lot. It is the rarity when we feel like we are being listened to and heard, and someone, even if they totally disagree, is trying to understand, right? They're meeting us halfway, and you're like, okay, so I don't know, but I'm gonna stick with you. In both education and in journalism, those are the connecting factors, is what Tristan just talked about, our shared humanity, that we all have stories and that we all have value, regardless. And, I think that is what makes someone a human, but that's what makes them a good journalist, is that they, every time they go in, they actually do care.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I still, even when I interview or even when I participate, like, everyone gets nervous, even the most seasoned veterans.
I was nervous coming into tonight.
Oh no, that's horrible. Don't be nervous, Ben. You're fine. No, but you do, right? Like, so, because I mean, there's an aspect of performance to the whole concept, but ultimately, like, once you start having a conversation, you're like, you know what, that person's pretty cool. Like, that'll do just fine. And I think that it's really just getting lost inside of that give and take and that conversation that is, that's the beautiful part. Like, everyone who's been a journalism student at some point has had that money interview where, like, you come out of it and it's like a freaking adrenaline rush, right? You're like, that was the best. And, like, it was like, we had such a great conversation. They said such great things. And I learned so much. They're not all like that, but when they are, like, you get swept away in the fact that you got to share someone else's world. And I just remember a handful of times when I was first reporting out in the world and just was overwhelmed by how interesting people were.
Yeah, that's what I love. Really, that's what I love about journalism, is fun, like, just learning about people, cultures, things I didn't know, and expanding my own, knowledge, and then, by what the job is, expanding it for other people too,
right,
and sharing that. It is really, really, really special.
Yeah. I think it's also really interesting to talk to people who might work in the same field, but kind of have different outlooks on it. Like, I remember I did an internship with the Walton Tribune over in Monroe, and they had a yearly magazine that they did, and I wrote about the coffee shops in Monroe. I talked with the owner of one of the coffee shops, the one that I went to every day, so they already kind of knew me. The owner was super passionate, just super impassioned about everything she said. Like, you could tell her heart was in it. I went down to the other one, talked to the GM. They've had a lot of issues and actually ended up closing not too long after after I interviewed them. It was a completely different experience. They were just kind of very down about everything. You could tell that their heart was really not in it. So it's always an interesting place to be in, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that's, that is part of my whole schema about this industry and what we're doing too, is that I don't think we give people enough room. And Ben, you kind of mentioned this earlier too, like, we make mistakes, right? Like, we're people, like, and the people that we encounter are also in that, there are some days when I'm like, I'm killing it. And then, man, especially this past year, there's some days where I'm like barely hanging on, and I'm genuinely a happy, optimistic, positive, energetic person, but shoot, 2020. And so I think, being able to give yourself and your interviewees that space to be like, man, they could be having a bad day, or man, they could be having a bad couple of years. Let me see where they're at, and what can I meet them there? And just allowing people to be people and to have space and to breathe. I think we just all need to get better at that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that will wrap us up. I think we went a little bit longer than this show normally goes, but I'm okay with it because it was an incredible conversation. Dr. Bright, thank you for joining us this week. Like I said, incredible conversation. This went much better than I was nervous about it going. So I'm glad that Tristan had this recommendation.
No, I was not nervous, and I'll tell you why. I stopped by Dr. Bright's office often when I was, especially my last semester, and I was never nervous because Dr. Bright's office was a place where I could go and explain what was happening in my life. And like, not only is she a great journalism professor, she's a good friend. So thanks for being on.
My pleasure, gentlemen. And really, because you are the two best students I've ever had.
You keep saying that.
Yeah. I'm not sure I was the best student in that class.
You can go fact check it later if you need to.
Okay.
That's I'll let you work on that distance.
I will.
Yeah. But no, it was a pleasure. This is a highlight. This is a great way to kick off being back and teaching again. And just really, you guys are fantastic human beings. You are going to do amazing things. And please keep in touch so I know where you go next, because who knows?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, for all of you listening, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to keep up with all the other Vider Media stuff. We've got new episodes of Setting the Scene on Wednesday. I believe Troll 2 is dropping this week, which is a horrible movie, but it was, we had a good time talking about it. And then new episodes of Tea with Doug G, where Doug will be back next Monday at 9:00. But until then, I'm Ben, he's Tristan, and she is Dr. Amanda Bright, and that has been The Tea. Y'all have a great week. Let me get the right graphic closed. Bye, guys.